5 seconds of feedback. Extra chatter.
24. Thank you. I'd like to call the planning and zoning meeting today on October 24th at 5:46. Next item is approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes or anything they would like to add? Oh, we need a roll call first. I'm sorry.
Samuelson, Forrest,
Here.
Grant,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Thompson,
Here.
Steiger,
Here.
Reagonator.
Andrew, I'm just bummed we can't see your face. It always makes me happy to see you.
You know, I'm sad I couldn't be there.
Yeah, you're not showing your camera, so. Anyway.
I didn't do my hair today.
Oh, yeah, I get it. Good call. No problem. Happy.
Note to self. So do we have any changes to the agenda? Anyone need any? Changes? Well, then can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Great. Roll call?
Forrest,
Yes.
Brown,
Yeah.
Thompson, Steiger,
Here.
Grant,
Yes. And next item, approval of the minutes from, what was that? What was that date? The,
10-10.
oh, wait, it's right here in front of me. Sorry. Can you tell it's a Monday? October 10th. Anybody have any changes to the minutes? If not, can I get a motion to approve them?
4 seconds.
Good. Can we have roll call?
Brown,
Yeah.
Thompson, Steiger,
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
Grant.
Yes. All right, welcome, everyone. Anybody have any public comments that they'd like to make that are not on the agenda? Perfect. Then we are going to move to the first, number 5, Dunn property.
Yep, sure thing. So I think I've got them in the wrong order. Oh, there it is. Okay, so first item tonight is for the preliminary plat for the Dunn property. This is the area that was recently annexed into the city. Here on our agenda map, it's south of Michael Foods. It's a 40-acre site. They're preliminary platting a road down the center and a couple lots initially. Eventually, they plan to develop that whole 40 acres. So you can see here on the plat plan, the kind of layout of lots. They're initially doing the, you can see it better here. North is to the left on the screen. They are initially platting out the east half of that 40 acres with 3 lots, 2 fronting to Delaware, and then an outlot at the back for detention basin, outlot Y for future development, and outlot X for future development. If you go through the rest of the layout, you can see kind of lot 1 and 2. This isn't necessarily a site plan. This is just showing what a proposed layout of lot 1 and 2 might look like. Access coming off of Delaware potentially, but then also this main road, they're calling Madison Street right now, connecting to Delaware Street. And then here you can see kind of the overall layout with the grading, the detention basin, the southeast corner. Sewer for these lots will go up to the Delaware sewer, waters along Delaware as well. So services are there for everything. If there are any questions.
Is there anyone from the project that would like to speak on behalf that Luke did not?
I don't know if we have anyone. Dan Carlson.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
This is Dan Carlson with WB Realty on behalf of the development. we don't have any comments. If you guys don't have any questions on the property, but like it was mentioned, we do have sanitary and water services off Delaware to serve lots 1, 2, and 3. Outlot Y and X are proposed as outlots because we do have plans to tie to future sewer extensions to the south that the city is in the process of planning in the next 18 to 24 months.
This is all industrial type business, right?
This
It is.
M1 right now.
So with Windsor, Michael's and this, are we worried about a congestion coming out onto the highway right there?
At the Delaware in 24. Not particularly. We did, when that was widened out and we paved everything. There is a specific left turn lane north onto Highway 28, and then a separate lane that kind of flares out there for southbound traffic. So
has there been an increase of any type of accidents of people trying to turn left onto 28 to go north?
I don't believe we've done a traffic study of that area, but I've not just completely heard that that's the case. So,
It's hard to turn out of, say, Mackinac going left, and then now I hear what Donna's saying. We're adding a lot more people doing shift change or whatever.
sure.
Would that lot to the right prevent any future road being developed south of Delaware? Like at the very southern portion of, yeah.
Down here. Not necessarily. One of the things the city's working towards, if I back out on this map, is so all of this area kind of south is all industrial. So we're looking at some of this potentially being another, what they would call certified site. The Windsor Windows Michael Foods area was a certified site, and that's basically a Iowa EDA process that kind of gets our industrial site listed as kind of like one of the priority sites in Iowa for people that come to the state looking for ground. So one of the things that we've struggled with that is, we don't know what those are, so we don't want to necessarily plan out a road network that maybe chunks up that property and then have somebody that comes in that wants 120 acres. So we're good with what they're doing, showing that road come through. It may be that there's a road that goes east-west on the south side of that. It may be that that road continues on south more, depending on how development happens. But we're trying to leave the surrounding area as blank of a slate as possible to let it kind of fit the form factor of what might come out of that certified site process.
The orientation of the site plans here, Luke. So, yeah, that one, is that oriented, like Delaware is on the north?
Yep.
there, right?
Yeah. So north is on your left.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, Luke, where Madison Street connects into Delaware right there, at least proposed, that's still paved part of Delaware, right? Because I know it's right there is where it transitions to gravel, correct?
Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah, so they're showing their connection opposite of this drive with Michael Foods, and the pavement stops kind of right here. So
Okay.
then when future development happens with the other half of that, we'll have to have a Delaware paved that way. So we'll have to have a discussion with the developers at that point in time.
Any other questions? So can I close the public hearing at,
We don't,
or we don't have to what?
there's no public hearing.
I mean, nothing, okay.
You're right.
Then can I get a motion to approve number 5 agenda?
Stagger motion.
That's the second.
Hillary, roll call.
Brown,
Aye.
Thompson,
Aye.
Steiger,
Aye.
Forrest,
Yes.
Grant.
Moving on to item
Do
number.
those, question on what we approved there.
Mhm.
Like, you guys always say at the bottom, like, yeah, approve it with these stipulations. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like that they'll follow subdivision.
So that's what we're approving. is-
Yes.
Yeah. great.
Yep. So it's kind of a catch-all that we've always put it there that way anybody misses something that was there, it's like, well, we approved it, that they would follow everything, even if you
Yeah.
didn't call it out, so. Yep.
All right, moving on to item number 6, Farms of Howland, Plat 5. Final plat. Luke, would you like to give us an update?
Sure. So this is a final plat for the Farms of Howland area. We're calling this one Plat 5. It's the area north of City State Bank. You can see there on the map. What we're essentially doing with this is creating 2 development lots, and then the access easement between those 2. So lot 1 and lot 2 each have half of that access easement on their properties. And then lot 1 was the area, last meeting we had the public hearing for the rezoning related to car wash. So the south half of lot 1 is where they were looking at doing that car wash. So we'll likely have another plat come forward at some point to split lot 1 into 2, but they weren't quite sure exactly where that lot line was going to go to create the car wash lot. So right now we're doing this so that car wash company can buy lot 1, and then they'll likely have another plat come forward at some point here in the future.
It was a long time ago that we had this discussion, but are we getting a sidewalk on the side of the highway?
No, you're talking along the east side of, or west side of lot 1.
Mhm.
Yeah, originally the Farms of Holland plat had talked about trail coming all the way up Highway 28. We decided that as part of, well, really starting with City State and then the Farms of Holland one, at that point in time, Public Works didn't like the idea of doing a trail along there because of the need to do some kind of large bridge across this kind of gully that's on the north side of the senior estates. And with the park having trails through it, not too far away, we felt that that was an adequate north-south connection from Colonial up to Beardsley.
So they could be on Beardsley. They're gonna come up through the Elizabeth Holland all the way to Colonial Parkway.
Yep.
And then where can they go? Can they go farther on this side down towards the new Norwalk Central?
Yeah, on the south side, from the Hy-Vee ground, if that developed, we would require it going south down to that. The Hy-Vee one will probably be the gap for the time being. So at that point, they'll get to Colonial, and yeah, it's not gonna go anywhere unless they can go farther to the east and get in through Holland Point. There's gonna be some gap in there for a while going south until developments happen, just because the ideal would be to have the second one along Highway 28 going south through Colonial, which we do still plan to do. It's just, we would normally require that at the time of development. We could, as a city, at some point decide to just build it, but I don't think that's in our CIP right now, so.
I would suggest even just a little gravel path.
Some way to, I mean, that's not a bad idea, especially once we get the Norwalk Central thing going. So
Okay.
I can certainly bring that up at our CIP discussions.
Since
Half the town lives on that side of the highway.
east and west side of this town are so split because of that highway.
Yep.
I wouldn't put a kid across it anywhere. Any other questions? Anyone from?
We don't have anyone. They did let me know that they weren't able to be on the meeting tonight, but filled me in. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We're just splitting that lot in 2, but happy to answer any other questions.
Anybody? Then I would close this discussion and may ask for a motion.
Force motions.
Second.
Hillary, roll call.
Thompson, Steiger,
Aye.
Forrest,
Yes.
Brown.
Yeah.
Grant.
Moving on to number 7, Norwalk Central plat, final plat for number 1.
Okay, so this is another final plat. This is establishing the lots for what we're calling the main part of Norwalk Central with the sports fields, the sportsplex, and then the city core lot. So you can see the final plat here, establishing lot 1, which is where the Heartland Fields are, Lot 2 is the city Norwalk core building. Lot 3 is the Sportsplex building and parking lot. And then Lot 4 is an developable outlot. So it's not termed an outlot, but it's an undeveloped lot right now that they're working on potential users for. So we don't have anything that we know that's going to go there, but it's another lot within that development. And then outlot X is the city park area. We did just have a meeting today with our city attorney and Diligent and just everybody involved with this project. And we are going to update this final plat with a street right-of-way lot here on the edge of this where a public street is planned to go. That's going to get built here next spring. But our city attorney wanted us to have that right-of-way as part of this plat, just to make sure we had access to the site in case, worst case scenario, that road didn't get built, there's still access to it and the city can go in and build the road. So we don't anticipate that to be the case. We've done all these development agreements with Diligent and everyone to make sure that road gets done. We've approved the construction plans for that road. They're out there grading stuff now. So
Will that go all the way up to?
yep. So that would end up, this would be a little chunk of East 18th. East 18th right now ends at this spot where my cursor is. This would just make sure that the East 18th chunk right of way was deeded to the city with this plat. But then the road will get built. It's part of Hughes Century Crossing Plat 7. All this stuff has had multiple working parts. This is a map you're probably going to see a lot of in the future, just trying to keep track of everything that's going on and happened in there. It's kind of our master list of everything. So you have all the different plats that we've done. So you see Plat 7 is the big pink area up here, and that includes the majority of Chatham over, and then also the East 18th extension up and down. So we're just going to carve out that little section of 7 and move it over to the Norwalk Central Plat 1.
So Luke, just to confirm, plat 7 is enough land mass for that road easement. There's no road easement that would need to come into this plat.
No, yeah, Plat 7 gets us all the way there once that one comes forward. The right of way that we'll add to this plat prior to council is just so that the city owns land that gives access to the sports complex area.
Okay, thanks. It looked like it from this map. This map actually is really good because it shows the roadway and then even easement, including, does that include all the way to the sidewalk or up to the sidewalk or to the curb?
Yeah, the lot line actually goes, it's actually 1 foot on the other side of the sidewalk. So it includes
Okay.
all the sidewalk area and everything.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Concerns?
I had neighbors ask
Mhm.
about buffer
Mhm.
of trees and such. I believe it talked about the buffer being by the townhouses. And they wanted to know if there was some coming by the more southern area. So I said I would maybe ask.
I might have to go back after the meeting and pull some stuff out. I know as part of the site plan we did for the fields, they showed a bunch of trees in here around the parking lot that's in this area. And then I believe as part of it was the field site plan as well. The detention basin down there had trees kind of coming down and around the back half of like the south side of the detention basin.
And so they when they saw this, they're like, oh, they talked about trees here, but we haven't had any trees going back there.
Yeah, and it's a process getting through everything. I don't know when
Yeah.
the trees would,
You
a
know,
lot of times the landscaping happens at the end of the project, so, but one of our checklists to let somebody occupy and start using their project is Elliot goes out and counts trees and shrubs on the site. So I can assure you that he will be counting trees and shrubs at some point during all of this, likely next spring, summer, I would guess.
Can I attain a motion for the final approval?
For a second.
Larry, roll call.
Steiger,
Aye.
Forrest,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Thompson,
Aye.
Grant,
Aye. Moving on to number 8, the Hughes Century Crossing Plat 5 for the approval of its final plat.
Open the wrong. Okay, so another final plat, similar area. This is Hughes Century Crossing Plat 5. So, oh no, I clicked the wrong one. That's Farms of Howland. Was it my fault? Did he link the wrong? That's not my fault. Let me see. Maybe this one is linked back. Let's
It's in the email too. The correct link is in the email, I'm pretty sure.
have to open up the whole agenda. Let's see if I can here. Agenda current. There we go. I'm getting to it. Got ahead of myself. I closed it down. Okay. So final plat of Hughes Century Crossing Plat 5 is primarily the first part of Chatham to the first intersection, and then Hughes Drive. So if we jump down here, you can kind of see the weird shape of that. Primarily what it's doing is the street lots for Chatham coming off Highway 28 to the first intersection with Hughes, and then the Hughes Drive connection all the way down to the existing pavement at Gordon and Hughes Drive. And then that creates 4 development lots. Lot 1 is highway fronted right at the corner of Chatham and 28. Then 2 lots to the east of Hughes Drive. These lots would be kind of the first 2 available Norwalk Central lots as far as the kind of commercial district with the kind of 0 lot line development type stuff. And then lot 4 here was another large development lot that's adjacent to the city park and north of the fields. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, this might develop as one big project. Lot 4, it might get split again at some point based on what somebody wants to do there. So, yeah. I can answer any questions.
That little place to the left, Luke, yeah, there.
This one,
Yeah.
that's an existing lot that was part of Hughes Century Crossing Plat
Yeah.
1. So when we did the lot that has the Mahalos and the subway,
Yep.
it had Gordon as a drive-in and a little bit of Hughes Drive, and then 2 lots on either side. So, yep. So that one's already developed, but it's gonna have roads on all sides now, finally.
Is there anyone from the project that'd like to speak on it?
We had someone online from,
Tim.
I think I saw Tim Portman on if he's got anything.
Sorry, guys, technical difficulties. I don't have anything to add, but happy to answer any questions if there are.
Board, do you have any other questions or concerns? Or we should also say positives. Well, then I would ask for a motion for the final plat.
Brown seconds.
Hillary Bockel,
Forrest,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Thompson, Steiger,
Aye.
Grant.
aye. Item number, what are we at, 7, 8? No, 9. Public hearing and recommendation on an update for the Norwalk Comprehensive Plan.
Okay. You want to open public hearing first? And we can do all
Sure, I
this stuff
will.
before
I'll
public
open the
hearing?
public hearing at 6:10.
Okay.
And Luke, do you want to start?
Yep, I'll take it away and then I'll turn it over to our consultants. So we're here today to, for this public hearing, to kind of consider the final draft, I guess, of our comprehensive plan we've been working on over the last couple of years. I was looking this up. We started in March 2020. We approved the contract, I think, with you guys on March 5th of 2020. And then I looked back and they told me I couldn't come to the office anymore like 3 days later. So impeccable timing to start a comprehensive plan that requires a lot of public input. But we did our best with that, kind of extended that process a little bit, probably over 2 summers instead of just doing it the summer of 2020. Held a lot of steering committee meetings, public workshops, surveys, some pop-up meetings, went out to events when we could. Really just tried to talk to any group that we could about it. And that resulted in our draft, which hopefully you had a chance to look at. It's really looking to guide the community over the next 20 years and give us a new land use plan that focuses on some new areas of town that we hadn't looked at in previous plans and infrastructure needed for that. With that, I guess I won't spend too much more time. I'll turn it over to Chris. He's got a presentation he's going to run through, and then we can answer any questions. Just tell me when you want to jump to it. Oh, not a new slide. Whoa.
You can
I'm
add a
just
slide if you
messing
want.
everything up. Where's the present button? What did I do? Got this thing at the bottom
Oh, yeah, it's underneath there.
there.
You can go to top slideshow, start.
Man,
That slide.
from beginning. There
Yeah,
we
there
go.
you go.
You're gonna have a blank slide you gotta talk
No worries.
over. All right, there we
I
go.
don't use a lot of notes on PowerPoints anyway.
Fair enough.
Chris Jansen with MSA Professional Services. Along with me, I have Sarah Runkle, also with MSA, and Mr. Shires from Confluence. We were the consultant team that worked on the comprehensive plan update. As Luke said, we started in 2020 and took it slow for a little while, but we're finally at the point where we are done. Go ahead in the next slide there, Luke.
What is going on here?
Next slide.
Got a weird view here. You keep going. I'm gonna
Okay,
figure out what's
so
going on
Luke
here.
mentioned a little bit about the process. I'll go over some of that and then we can dive into the draft plan just a little bit and then talk about again what's next, which at this point is you guys, saying, yep, this looks good, making a recommendation to council, council adopts it by resolution. But just a little bit overview on the process. Go ahead, Mr. Thank you. So we had basically a 4-step process. Community engagement ran throughout. Existing conditions analysis, we did sort at the beginning and continued to adjust that as we moved along. Creating a community profile, vision, and framework was kind of the 3rd step. And then finally, the creation of the new plan is the 4th step. And as I said, the community input engagement lasted throughout this thing. We've had a website that was open the whole time. Surveys, stakeholder interviews. Actually, go to the next slide, Luke, and I think it shows a lot of this. There we go. So project website, community surveys, we did a SWOT analysis at the beginning. We were online at that point. Community input workshop was online. We've had a steering committee that helped us throughout the process, had about 6 meetings or so, which was the scheduled amounts, spread out a little bit more than we had thought. But crowdsourced map, we actually had 2 of those. We had one at the beginning to associate the SWOT analysis, that strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Then we had another one when we came up with the future land use draft concept, where we had a story map that people could walk through kind of the history of land use planning in Norwalk, that this isn't, we've been doing this for years. This is a update. The city of Norwalk basically updates about every 5 years or so. And a crowdsourced map on the end of that where people could leave their comments on the future land use map. Pop-up events, we were at Chamber Golf Outing and Celebrate Norwalk, and then a youth survey as well. So there's been a good deal of public engagement. There was also a draft plan open house, August?
Late July.
Late July?
Yeah.
Late July, which Luke invited a lot of the property owners in the areas outside of current Norwalk, but the area that to the west, for the most part, and south, where there's a lot of growth, at least in part of this plan. Really good turnout, packed meeting, a little tense at a few times, but once we got in some discussions and once we went to the boards and people had a chance to do their one-on-ones, pretty positive result overall in why the city was looking at what they're doing. So if you want to go to the next slide. And actually, so the plan organization it's basically organized into 5 chapters and 3 appendices. The first chapter is an introduction chapter. The second chapter is a public engagement, kind of gives a summary of all the public engagement that we did. The third chapter is the goals and objectives, vision, goals, and objectives for the entire plan. The 4th chapter is just land use. So it has existing land use stuff. It has kind of our key why we were doing this. It has the future land use. It has future land use categories and recommendations, as well as the goals and objectives for that. The 5th chapter is the implementation chapter, which has some just general, like how do you amend the plan? How do you go through with those types of things? Who gets to amend it? Who is a partner in this planning process? And then it has a pages of tables, basically, which is the action plan for implementation. And that we actually did a really unique process. We worked pretty close with Luke, and he worked with all of the directors from the different departments to help fill in the action steps for that implementation plan. And the idea behind that is that the goals and the objectives don't change much. The goals are kind of those really lofty, overarching sort of things. The objectives are things we want to continue to strive for. And then those action steps would change yearly. And as I've said several times in meetings, you guys have a really good capital improvements process in Norwalk. I think Mr. Nelson does a fantastic job on that, along with all of your department heads. So we tried to create something that would be updated about that same time as you're looking at updating the CIP and budgeting, that this chart would go back out to the department heads and they would check off the things that they've done. They could add new action steps. Basically, it becomes a living Google implementation document is the idea behind that. But in the draft plan, we did kind of export or import the most current version of that Google draft into the PDF. But we do anticipate that continues to change, just like your land use map will, and then go to the next one. So this is the draft future land use map. It was most recently updated on the 17th. As you can see, and some of you have been coming to meetings and that kind of thing, there is a lot of growth planned to the west at this point in the map. And it is just a map. It is just a guide. We anticipate there will be change, just like in the implementation plan. The primary reason that we're looking at that is because there are infrastructure, there's infrastructure being planned along the North River there. And we want to make sure that we have an idea of how we're going to develop so that we can have an idea of what capacity Norwalk may need in the future as that infrastructure, sewer infrastructure continues to develop. The other thing is we want to find some alternative routes for industrial and commercial growth. And obviously industrial and commercial growth needs good transportation, good access, those types of things. One of the first expectations that came out of this, the planning process, was that we identify more areas for commercial industrial growth in order to help better balance the tax burden. It's a residential community. You are continuing to see commercial and industrial growth. Obviously, most of the plats that we're here tonight are all commercial and industrial growth type things. So to continue to facilitate that, to continue to relieve some of that burden from your residential properties. And we plan for a lot of commercial and industrial growth and a means to access those growth areas. With that.
One thing
yeah.
to add real quick to that, Chris, one thing I think that clicked well in that open house when we were talking with folks is to remember and think about this dark black line that kind of outlines all the color as the area that we're studying what land uses might be in that area. It's not the area that the city's going to be in the future. So that's not a future city limit boundary. It's what area are we studying today to try to understand what 2040 and beyond might be. So there's perfectly good chance that some of those areas will be other cities. Maybe the city of Norwalk at some point defined goes beyond these boundaries based on things. So, but for this exercise, it's the area that we're trying to understand what could happen so that we can look at those infrastructure investments and those land use things and better understand what might happen.
Chris, Sarah, anything you guys want to add at this point? You're on a roll. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, so with that, again, we're all here, happy to answer any questions you guys have, any recommendations, and then, yeah, the next steps, obviously tonight's review, and then we look forward to a recommendation that we can take to council for their approval in November.
We'll put it back on the map if you guys want to talk about anything. Or we can, I've got the draft document that we can pull up as well. If you want to look at any of that goals or implementation stuff, we can go over more of that. It's really kind of open at this point. I know we do have some people on Zoom as well that may, I don't know if they just are here to listen about stuff or if they were here for other items, but certainly as it is a public hearing, if you're on Zoom and you'd like to ask a question or make a statement about stuff, you certainly can do that while we're in the public hearing. So if you do that, maybe just unmute yourself and announce yourself. That way we can not have 5 people talking at once, but we'll muddle through that if that happens. So I'll turn it back to you, Donna.
Okay, is there anyone that would like to have questions or anything that's on Zoom?
If you're also more comfortable on Zoom, putting a question in the chat, I'll keep an eye on that and we can ask those questions. So, but it doesn't look like there's anybody on Zoom wanting us to talk right now. So
Nobody?
doesn't seem so.
All right. So we need, was that a request for public hearing? Yeah.
Yep. Next, you can leave public hearing open while you guys talk about things you want to talk about it as a commission, or you can close public hearing and talk about it outside the public hearing. Doesn't particularly matter at this point. So
Probably leave it open. I'm sure we'll have questions. Anybody have any questions?
How the stuff going west? How aggressive do you think we'll try and be to make that happen?
Far west, I think it's more of a trying to understand corridors and stuff. So I don't know that we're like gonna be pushing to have that interchange by 2030 or anything. The main thing, let me,
Is
see if I
West
can
Des Moines owned
annotate.
above that, and that's where, is
what's that?
that all West Des Moines above? In that?
So yeah, out here is, so West Des Moines kind of out in this area that becomes Madison County. And then this is kind of coming area based on kind of what they're doing. The thing that's going to drive how aggressive we are is this sewer line that I'm kind of drawing in blue here. I mean, that's a long stretch of sewer. Yeah. Oh, you're talking, and then up also.
Yeah, it goes, I would say the
goes up here.
the big discussion was that line is, not only would it serve this area, but would also serve West Des Moines growth into Madison County.
Now we are, this area I'm crudely circling. That's an area that we're actively planning to build that first chunk of sewer. And so, we're working on doing some, we actually have to get our own easements through our own ground because of some NRCS process. So we're in the middle of doing that, which is cumbersome. And we've got preliminary designs going for that. A big part of that before we could do the preliminary designs, is we didn't do much work on it until this was like 85–90% of what we wanted it to be. Because we need to make decisions on pipe size and stuff based off of what came out of these land use discussions. So I don't think we're going to be ridiculously aggressive trying to like punch this out there, but as opportunity comes, we're going to stretch that sewer along. And as we need it to, because that blue line is needed for all of that gray industrial. And so that's kind of the main area that we're looking at, where we can get some high value industrial ground, light industrial type things that can help meet some of the city's goals of offsetting our tax base. If that's really what we want to do, then yeah, we're probably going to be looking at extending that sewer to serve those projects when it makes sense and when there's something there looking to do it. So from a city perspective, we got the willingness to do that infrastructure investment. I think probably it comes down to more property owner willingness to sell at some point.
You had mentioned tying into, West Des Moines expansion as well. I mean, is there any incentive to do that, or what's the draw of?
I wouldn't classify it necessarily as an incentive. So the WRA is the regional wastewater that Norwalk's a member of, West Des Moines a member of. A lot of that planning is based on them, West Des Moines and other Western areas coming to them and saying, look, we need access here. Where are we going to get it? And them saying, well, the most logical place is to put it right up here, right up the river corridor, obviously, so you can have gravity flow. That, I would say, that is the thing that was probably the driver on kind of looking. It's not necessarily incentive, but as Luke was saying, you want to right size the pipe. So the pipe that they're putting in right now, you want to make sure it's big enough to serve everything here, so you don't have to come back and upsize that pipe at the very beginning.
we've been in active conversations with the city of Cumming and city of West Des Moines about that sewer line. And, we will be, as we're going through, I mean, we're probably still 2-3 years away from the first pieces of that sewer going in. And so, there's a question of, well, if we know that West Des Moines is ultimately going to connect to that, do they pay for a portion of the sewer today?
Gotcha.
Or do we pay for it all now? And then when it comes time for them to connect it, then we say, okay, well, we've got this big pipe and we're using 50% of its capacity. We'll sell you 20% of the capacity. There's always the option to do that, which
So it's more so just-
probably is more likely what would happen, just because it's hard for a community to make an investment in a sewer that only helps us. It might be 20 years before it helps them. So.
But it's still cheaper to build it bigger now than it is to go back. The other thing I would say on the, Luke, you're absolutely right on a lot of it, especially, will be property owner driven. We've given them a guide and they may choose to go, they may choose to, there were a lot of people at that meeting that just said, I just want to sit on my 10-acre lot and be left alone. And understandable, but West Des Moines doesn't care if you sit on your 10-acre lot and want to be left alone. They want sewer and it's coming through here. So we got to plan accordingly for those land uses. The other thing is, you guys remember the MPO, this land use map will go to them. And as they look at regional land use and then couple that with their transportation investments on a regional basis, this plan will come into that conversation as well. So the interchange and that kind of thing, as Luke said, that may be a ways off, but might as well plan for it and get it into the discussion. Where it lands over there, who knows? But
another big component of that would be, trying to get, it's at this point getting buy-in from other people's plans, right? So we want the MPO to start recognizing that road corridor, that interchange as something that they see happening in the next 20 years. So it's in their plans. The county is just starting up a comprehensive plan.
both of them, Madison and Warren County are both.
So, we definitely want Warren County to do that. I don't think I was aware that Madison County was, but I think we probably want to talk to Madison County too, just to try to make sure things are all jiving, right? Because, this area is, the county is going to be the one that kind of decides what happens in some of these areas until the city annexes closer to that, because we only have authority to look at things within 2 miles of our boundary. So we want to make sure that they're on board with this stuff as well. So, and we've had good conversations and good discussions with the county. I don't have any belief that they won't look at this and kind of view it as a positive for their planning efforts too.
So being that is this the most, that's not the right wording. In this new future land map, what is the one item there that you feel like is going to be the hardest to get done? Or is there one item like right now that you think is going to be difficult and why?
Interchange. That Chris and I both interchange will be the hardest. Very important. Yeah.
And why is that? Just because of money?
The number of agencies involved in the money saving. Yeah, because it's Iowa DOT obviously has to be on board and see the need for it and put it into their programming and that kind of thing. So
My former life was working at the MPO, doing their long range planning and their long range projecting, and like the Grand Prairie Parkway interchange. I mean, that was being talked about 10 years before it got built, right? Ankeny, like all of those, so you got to get it on people's radars well ahead of time, because when you go do it, there's engineering studies that need to be done, and those take years to do, and justification reports, and all the agencies you got to. It's not like we want an interchange there, and then you just build the ramps and you're good. I mean, there's a lot of background work that goes into getting them done, and so the first step is somebody saying there needs to be one there.
So does this landmass area also include talk of how G14 is going to be changed with the curve?
yes, it does.
Can I zoom in here?
There.
No,
G20.
I can't zoom in when it's. What am I doing? Let me close that. There, can I zoom in here? Yeah, yes, there we go. Oh man, I drew on it.
G14. G14, North Avenue.
Okay, There we go. Hold on, let me erase some things here.
The S curves.
Yeah. So the old S curve is kind of shown here. And this blue coming through like that. And, you know, this isn't real definitive, but let me change that color to something.
Different color.
Well, that's green. Why is that a highlight? Kind of make it thicker. There we go. There. So it's trying to smooth it out like that. Whereas the old one was kind of more of that sharp turn down and then back. So there's the idea that would smooth out there a little bit. I don't know that, or this plan doesn't necessarily say that that's the definitive. This kind of smoothing out of it was proposed originally when we did the G14 traffic study and said, you know, we need to do something to get rid of these S curves. And they kind of proposed that. What this is kind of showing here is it's really trying to more show land uses than anything, because there's like a ridge right along here where all this drains to the south. And so then all this goes to the north. So if we can make sure that corridor aligns to where the valuable commercial frontage of G14 is sewerable, then that's going to happen a lot more likely than waiting for sewer to get drug all the way up from North Avenue to the backside of that, because that's the end of the sewer line on that side of it. So, so that's one solution. I just had a meeting with Snyder and Associates, kind of talking about how now that this land use plan is getting done, we need to start digging with that again. And one of the concepts they threw out again was having G14 tee into a roundabout here and then go south into a roundabout there. And then it's not a straight corridor anymore. It's, you come in and you go around a roundabout to go north on 50th a little bit, and then a roundabout again to go back out on Cumming Avenue. That's one concept. I don't know if that's the best idea because you lose some of that through connection that G14 is now, but yeah, it's certainly something we want to study. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. We've talked to a couple of developers in the area too. Kind of, we don't want to put a corridor in place and then have that mess up with a development plan. But then we talk to the developers and they say, well, we'll just fit whatever we want around it. So we're kind of in a weird spot where it's like, who's going to be the first one to say what we should do with that area? But
We're still trying to make 50th big corridor coming in.
on that screen. Yes. As you go farther north on 50th, we have commercial up there. As you get closer to County Line Road, I guess a kind of new thing to this one from our old land use plan is we're showing commercial basically all along the north side of the Echo Valley County Line Road extension. Before that was just kind of focused at either end of it. So trying to, again, capitalize on that proximity to Highway 5, and that County Line Road would be a major road on the north side of the lake once it develops. So again, trying to capitalize on areas that we know or hope will be high valuable places that we can get non-residential tax base in.
Board, any other questions, concerns, comments?
This is Andrew. I really appreciate the vision that we have. It kind of goes back to the whole, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so I think this tells everyone in the Des Moines Metro that Norwalk is here to stay and we're here to grow.
Guess a few other things to run through. I had put in the staff report. Oh my gosh, where'd they go?
This plan then, it serves, I mean, it's communicated lots of, how would it ultimately impact the work we do?
So it's gonna start with rezonings. So this map is gonna be our guide for any future rezonings. So when somebody comes to us and really before it even comes to you guys, our first check as staff is gonna be to come to this map, look at what they're proposing and does it match up. If it doesn't match up, well, if and they still really want to do it, we can bring a comp plan change to change the land use to you guys. So, you know, that's really The land use map itself, that's, I mean, it's our legal requirement to have that to do rezoning. So that's really gonna be the first thing. The other thing that, if we dug into some of the land use chapters, we did a little bit of work on some of the density stuff. So when somebody proposes a development like in one of these orange areas, we actually in that land use plan said that any development in there needs to be a minimum of 5 units an acre. So what we had seen before in the past was we had a medium density area and somebody would come and say, I'm going to do all single family homes in it. And that was allowed. So we had all this area in our old land use plan that was medium density, and we were able to say, in the future, we're going to meet our goals for having housing diversity and stuff. But the reality was all that medium density kept getting developed by single family. So this plan is much more targeted at where the medium density is. The old one was a little more broad brushed, and then it requires a minimum density. So if you're in one of those orange areas, you're going to have to do something that jumps your development up to 5 units an acre. That doesn't mean that it's all townhomes, but you got to pair your single family, if that's what you want to do, with some kind of other product that's going to jump that density up to that minimum 5 units an acre.
Yeah.
So that'll hopefully start getting us to some of the mixed density, integrated density that we want to try to see out of new developments. So that we would see that more at the probably subdivision level than, if somebody came in and was buying ground there and if it's already zoned or whatever, we would be trying to make sure it met that, or maybe at a PUD level.
What's an example of the new urbanism purple? What's an example of?
So the purple area, it's kind of the Norwalk Central area that we're working on with the kind of Norwalk Central town center area. It's probably the best example from a commercial standpoint.
Yeah.
Take us to
Resident-
another city.
What's that?
I mean, obviously over by the Norwalk Central, but I was just looking over by, again, where we were talking about going from the S curve to the.
Yep.
It looks like you have some commercial, then, so what would be the difference between commercial and, is it new urbanism?
Yeah, the new urbanism would allow residential to go in there as well.
Okay.
So, you're trying to get that close proximity of a little bit more density, higher density things, not necessarily apartments, but more a compact residential development being adjacent to that area. The area we have in town that's most similar to that is the Hughes Century Crossing single family and townhome project that's going on kind of south and east of the sports fields, right? Kind of north of where Elizabeth is at off Moral Huff. It's not a perfect one-to-one because there are some things that I would say could be better about that from a design standpoint. But from a compactness, it works pretty well. And from its proximity to Norwalk Central, it definitely works well. So,
But that's a residential as opposed to a commercial. then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, proximity of those things together. So we want to expect all of that to be all residential or all commercial. Likely what you'd see is commercial fronted on the kind of main road
Sure.
and then some kind of neighborhood residential
Tucked back behind.
tucked behind
Yep.
it.
Like West Glen.
West Glen, Prairie Trail type area, Peninsula District over in Iowa City.
I wanted to ask, I guess, a couple of questions. I'm trying to remember back to, I think it was what we said, end of July when we had that meeting. And I know I made a comment about how we're wanting to get rid of the, I guess, rural estates, like the bigger lots.
Mhm.
Has that, and I guess I didn't look, has that gone away? Like, have you gotten rid of that?
We no longer have the very low density residential. That was a specific category that was just for ag development, basically. So that's no longer there. If you have the paper one,
Yep,
what's the
yep.
density?
There's agricultural reserve,
Okay.
which would be those areas that would continue to, and then just the low density. So the ag reserve, areas that are located within floodplain, have steep topography, wetlands, or may consist of high value farmland. Basically, these areas are designated as agricultural reserve open space and would be preserved as such, but there would be housing within there. obviously.
What was our lot size for low density?
The low density is 1 to 5 dwelling units per acre. So typical lot sizes range from 7,500 square feet to 15,000 square
Yep.
feet.
So,
Yeah, that's the low density. So anything bigger than that, the acreage type stuff would just be in that agricultural reserve area. And obviously there's a lot of it south of the city. This stuff that is kind of currently in the city tends to be, it's more what was here prior to growth getting to it, that, in turn, that they're old acreages that were part of larger farms that have been, split off. There isn't but you could still do large lot, single family residential in that low density.
Because there's the want for the medium density or townhomes, but there's also the opposite.
Yep.
And I feel I feel like I'm in that, like the next step in our lives, we're gonna want
An acreage.
more land, but I don't want to feel like my town that I've grown to enjoy and love is not wanting me here. And that's what I want to make sure that that's not happening.
That is more of I think that's more, no, that there is not a reason to push those folks out. The bigger issue is the expense of that, and whether that will be something that builders, developers, and that kind of thing will see. There's the ability to do it here if somebody has the funds to pay for those lots and do sewer and water and that kind of thing. But the city has sewer, water services, so most of the development's going to be geared towards that servicing those lots with city utilities. And again, just from the, a 3-acre lot development is going to be pretty expensive per lot once you start spacing those out and that kind of thing, but it absolutely could be done.
And then my next question, it's not related to that, but the folks that you had mentioned that you would have kind of approached people and they're just like, I want to stay on my 10 acres and leave me alone. If we go and adopt this, are we kind of screwing those people over when the time comes to develop it? Because, oh, look, we've put it as industrial.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, and that, obviously this map might change first of all. So if there was one of those areas in the future where, that person really, they would come in and request an amendment to that. And there may be amendments either way, areas that we currently have as yellow that end up being better for commercial development or an ag, an industrial development or something like that. Those folks, I see it, and the way I explained it to them was kind of that argument before of, we have to plan for the utilities because they're serving a larger area than just this 10 acres, this 10 acres, this 10 acres. By not planning, we'd actually be doing them a disservice, potentially the future property owners in those areas. So right now, they may want to be left alone and not develop. And the city isn't going to come in and say, well, now you got to build single family houses. It's up to the property owner to come and make that, to say, I'd like to intensify the use of my property. And they'd have to be in the city at that point. Right now, a lot of that isn't even in the city. So until they decided to, be a part of the city for some reason or another, the city of Norwalk has no land use control over that. That's all unincorporated county type stuff. Should they want to intensify the land use of, the use of their property, and by intensify, I mean develop, from whatever it is now into something else. If Norwalk was going to be a part of that, they would have to annex. But what we have tried to do is plan for the, a reasonable extension of transportation and utilities so that should they want to do that in the future, they have the opportunity and the door isn't shut for them. Because Norwalk says, yep, we planned a sewer pipe big enough to serve this area. If you want to develop, or if your grandkids do, this is, like I said, this is more than a 20-year plan. Right here, what you're looking at, that like will not all happen in 20 years just based on Norwalk's growth over the past few decades. Some of it will, and pieces of it will, but for the most part, those rural areas. But the infrastructure planning is 50 years out. That's kind of where we're at with this. So if they don't want to intensify the use of their property, they won't have to. But should they want to sometime in the future, we're hoping that this is a good guide for that infrastructure that needs to be there.
With our current way that we do annexations and we do kind of growth of that stuff, we're really focused on people that want to be part of the city. So if you've got 10 acres out there and they don't want to be part of the city, they don't want to do that, and we're gotten annexation, like, we don't necessarily want to force that in unless there's some legal reason that we have to. Sometimes we have to because that guy's surrounded on all four sides, and then we have to, but right now, how I've seen annexation go, how I think, I don't see that changing in the near future based on the administration and the folks we have on as elected officials and the folks that we have in leadership positions. I don't see that as the case. I can't speak for, 20 years from now if I'm not here and, other folks change their mind about stuff, maybe it is different. But for now, I would say, we would do our best to try to avoid annexing people that don't want to be annexed.
It would be up to them to come to the city and propose to be annexed.
And to that regard, if there was a rural subdivision out of there that wanted to be annexed, we would probably even look really hard about accepting their request to be annexed, because that brings this whole swath of situations as well. I just think if we ever got to the point where we need to potentially annex Twin Lakes, I mean, that's not maybe the best thought that the city would want to do that, right? Because we would get property in the town, but now we've got to provide services to them, and there's not a water line there that we could accept that with city standards, or, we gotta get a sewer line to them. And, when you're annexed, there's expectation that city services get brought to you. And if it's difficult to do that, we might not want to annex an area that.
Right now, you're
is
really
difficult
saying
with that.
is there's no eminent domain
That's what I-
needs.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like I wanna make sure.
I think that's a big question for a lot of people.
I think it is better to have a plan, just because then it's like, this is the big picture. You get to choose in or not choose in. Like, I mean, you can't make it.
We'll use this map for our rezoning things, but I think one of the things we can all say about this map is that that's not what the city's gonna end up being, right? And those road lines that we have on there, that's not where the road's gonna end up being. But we have to understand in general where we're thinking about things so that we can start planning for things. And as you plan, the realignment of G14 is a great example. We want the concept that we're gonna realign it there. And then the opportunity when development happens in that area will give us the chance to actually set what it's gonna be.
And you'll probably have to adjust that map, this map, to whatever that final alignment looks like, along with the rest of it, because
So the only for sure thing is the interchange.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
I'll put my stamp
Done
on it.
deal.
Guaranteed. It's happening.
Signed, sealed, delivered. I agree with your point. I think it's better to have a big picture so that if there are people that disagree or have certain questions, you can just kind of show them more of a long-term layout as opposed to just a snapshot of time.
Well, then I will close the public hearing at 6:48. And do we need any deliberation? Does anybody have any questions?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is just where bike trails go on all of this. It's my friend group that talks to me a lot about bike stuff, and they do a lot of biking. So it's like, I mean, I don't know what I need to see it today. I know you factored that in.
Yes.
So,
yes, I would, so there's a couple things in here. We referenced I'm trying to think of it, the Greenways plan and the Parks plan that the city recently did prior to this. Both of those have direction on trail extensions, trail connections, that kind of thing. And then in the implementation plan, we've put in specific goals and objectives that address as development occurs, extend these trails, make these connections, continue to do what you're doing basically. And, you guys were just kind of looking at it tonight with some of those other plats on, yep, here's how we're gonna get that. And yep, when this develops down here. Same thing with future parkland. That park plan had some kind of areas laid out as the city grows. This, we don't necessarily put those exact trail locations or the exact park locations because they happen as development happens. What we want to make sure is, and you guys currently have in place, is that those conversations are happening as development occurs, as streets get built, that kind of thing, that the city's saying, yep, this needs to have a trail next to it. This is one of our major arterials, which would go in line with kind of the current stuff we're doing. So a lot of this plan just says support those activities that are already going along to extend trails throughout the city as it develops.
I think the big picture idea that this plan has that maybe those plans didn't is a green belt along the North River corridor. So we talk a little bit about that. We do reference that on the map. And that's something that's probably more in the line of the interchange as well. Like, I mean, that's a big ticket item that's probably longer out there, more opportunity for it to happen incrementally than an interchange, but
My addition would be, if this is what you're planning and you want to do the trails, if for some reason we're still asking if Hy-Vee is coming in 10 years, which God forbid. But my suggestion would be, it would be great for the city to make that push by putting in that little bit of whatever you could on the highway.
Yep.
I mean, then bikers can even come in from that way.
yeah, and I think that's part of, the greenways plan that we did identified all these connections that we had to make, like, so one of them that is actually gonna get done here, hopefully this fall yet, but Greg Young, around Greg Young, making that connection, and that's kind of the last gap in that area. So identifying those small connections, we might come to a point where we need to go back to that greenways plan, because I don't think a connection there was ever contemplated, but we also weren't that far along with Norwalk Central, right? So we were looking at more the existing system and fitting gaps. So it's a good example of how you always need to go back and revisit those plans and priorities, because I can totally see that thing jumping up to a 1 or 2 priority in the next 3 or 4 years once everything gets built out.
Yeah, I agree, Luke, because looking at this at the current parks and rec areas, there's very little actual public access. Our major parks and recs areas in dark green today are all golf courses. So, I mean, you got the railroad park or the one right there by the library. And then like, that's really it. You got Mackinac, which is softball, baseball fields and soccer fields. And then you got golf courses. So as I think about this, that is probably something we do need to look at, is where is our public parks going to be, so that we have something more than just golf courses for parks and rec areas.
Something that might be an idea for us to do in future meetings is just bring the Greenway plan back to just refresh the memories in the park plan. We don't tend to show like future park locations on this, just because, you don't want to tip your hand as to what the city might invest in from a park location. So we tend to work on that more incrementally as developments come in and require things. I have been working with Robin, our parks director, on some kind of way, an idea that we can maybe do some park districts and stuff, where we can start saying, we got to assemble these parks more cohesively into 20-acre plus parks that are through 4 developments, rather than right now we probably average 6 acres per park on new park ground. And that's concerning to our parks department, because as we keep getting more and more small 3 to 6 acre parks, that's a lot of maintenance responsibility for them to have to go around. It's a lot easier for them to maintain 1 24-acre park as opposed to 4 6-acre parks. So that's tricky to make line up, but we're working on some strategies for that. But yeah, we can bring back some of those plans, other plans that we've got forward. Couple I wanted to run back through, just one on the putting the staff report. Where am I at? Here we go. Just some major themes from things. I think we hit on most of these. But one thing that's not really referenced in land use plans is the idea that we need to do some studies and understand needs for expanded police, fire, and library services. And parks is identified there as well, but I think parks is kind of tacitly identified in some of those land use stuff. But when we did our goals and strategy discussions with all our department heads, that was a key that our library and fire and police leaders all kind of keyed on, is we want to make sure that we're planning for those in the future. And so much so that, I mean, I think one of the things that we're going to recommend out of this that the city take on is just doing a facilities plan that looks at everything, so we can get a better handle on what the next 10 years for city facilities looks like. And, what you don't want to do is, years ago, we talked about putting a second story on that end of City Hall to facilitate parks and city community development. economic development. Well, we decided not to do that, and then we built the core built like, it's just like if we would have made that decision 5 years ago, like we would have overbuilt everything because now we got the core building going on. And so it's just trying to decide where to make investments in the future. So, but that's not necessarily something that gets referenced in land use plan.
Not in the land use part, but it, again, in that action item, or in the action plan, under the action items, under goal 2, ensure that public facilities and city provided services meet the needs of residents and businesses, especially as new development increases demand for those facilities and services. You have developing first responders and essential services expansion plan to accommodate anticipated growth. And the first action step under there is conduct a community-wide first responder needs assessment to determine the future needs of fire and police. And then the second one is identify and secure a location for a new library facility and support library expansion plans. So again, while it's not on the color on the map kind of thing, it's in the plan, and staff has done a great job of combing through and coming up with some actionable items that they can take on in the next few years. And then for each one of those, we went through, you guys went through and put in kind of priority on where those would hit. And again, the intent of that is that it continues to change, that after that, after the library identifies where they want to be, they'll change that action step to another action step that they need council support for, community support for, whatever it is, to move forward with it.
Was there any talk about a new pool for the city, because we have outgrown that for sure?
I think that's part of that studying facility needs is through that. So no specific about, there's no goal in there specific about we need a new pool and build a new pool in this spot. I think that falls into the general facilities plan stuff. I think, you probably have some differing opinions around the city as you talk about that.
That pool's like 30 plus years old. It was from when we were 10,000 less people.
Sure.
Luke, he gives facial vibes to me that he's wanting to take that project on beginning next year.
Yeah.
We always fall under the parks
I'm
department.
emotionally, I'm very emotionally intelligent. What I'm getting from him is, God, I would love to, that's,
Really spearhead that.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm picking that up as well.
Start getting those posters out there.
You guys could be a good subcommittee for that. If I'm going there, I'm taking you with
I'm
me.
going on vacation.
Yeah.
No, but that's continually one that we hear from the community about. I think we definitely recognize that the pool is aged. I think the big thing is, I think at one point, a couple of years, maybe before my time, so I guess it'd be over 10 years ago now. Councilman Riva mentions it a lot of times when we talk about pool. Pretty sure it's anyway. The idea at one point there was a referendum on should we have money dedicated set aside for a new pool, and it didn't pass. Right, so
There's a big boat.
So at that point in time, like it's hard to go against that. So I don't know.
Nasty.
You'll have to.
Oh yeah, there's a boat.
Was that would have been late 2000s then?
And it was like linked with somehow with the police.
It was there kind of the type
For the
of
jail,
commercials
yeah.
on right now that we're seeing for the election too, kind of on both sides. That'd be super neat.
Pro pool commercials and anti-pro.
It was all for
Yeah.
funding for, I think it was the
Total
new
bucket.
jail and but yeah, there was more no signs in this town.
I don't think those discussions are ever going to go away, but
No.
we'll have to tackle it at some point.
I would say there are a couple action steps under, basically under the Parks and Rec to kind of develop a current inventory and desired recreational and desired need, which would fall into that, and establish some needs to fund additional recreation opportunities. So as well as
The generational has changed. I think when the vote was occurring, there was a little bit more older generation that was like, why am I paying for this? And I think it's changed for the younger. I think it was spearheaded right, it would be.
At the end of the day, if there's a champion for that and, it's a project that gets on the radar and, there's support for it, we're not we do projects that, have support from the community and that, are kind of brought before us. It's not like the city's ignoring the need for a pool. It's just not been a priority right now. So.
Moving on, anyone else have questions? Well, then I will again close it at 7 PM. And can I get a motion to approve the public? Is that what we need? Recommendation for the approval of the
Yep, just a recommendation to council. So basically, yeah, a motion.
2042?
Force motions?
Hillary, roll call?
Forrest,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Thompson, Steiger,
Aye.
Grant.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Moving on, I know Chief is in Colorado, right?
Thank goodness.
Yeah, and I don't know, I thought Ed was gonna try and be on, but I think he is. And we only have 5 participants, so he must not have been able to make it on.
Is Miss Holly on for community?
She
Or
has told me
economic?
that she's gonna be at the next meeting with her 2 new staff.
Thank you.
To introduce
Thank you.
them and give an
You in
ED
Rubio
update.
grad?
Um,
I thought you
From
were.
economic,
I was
I
a
mean,
couple
I
grades
can
slower
wrap
than you.
that in the-
That name was, the face was,
Thanks, everybody.
Good to see you.
thanks.
Good night. Thank you. So approved a lot of plats that are related to commercial projects. So I know we've got lots of interest in various lots and, I think she's been real busy on that side of things. Their new staff that they've got on board is highly competent, it seems. They jumped in and hit the ground running, letting the economic development stuff, I think, really expand what we need to do for the city. So that's exciting. On that side, really a lot of work on the core area and getting that building up and running. And then I know she's been working with various people on those first couple lots in what was that, Plat 5 that we approved? So that Chatham area and Hughes. So hopefully we get somebody to submit something on those here in the next few months and get a project for you all, but never quite sure what I can say and not say and get in trouble with her. So I'll just leave it at that. She can come next week, next meeting and drop names if she wants to. Community development side, again, all those plats coming through. We've got several site plans that we're working on. One, we've got a pre-app meeting later in the week for one of those lots in the Dunn property that we approved today. So we'll know a little bit better about what actually wants to go there. Still don't know. They've not told me anything about user other than industrial. So don't know really what they're looking at for being there, but would take up one of those lots and be the first kind of project in there. We're working with wrapping up. So we own this property down here, Serenity Woods. I don't know how much I've let you guys know about the process there, but when we bought it, there was an easement over it that was put in place by the NRCS for like conservation purposes. And our sewer line, that big sewer line that we talked about, the whole reason for the comp plan and all that goes through the NRCS easement. So we've got to do a pretty detailed process of vacating easement so that we can put our sewer in a conservation area and then reestablish that back on top of it. So we're working a lot with NRCS on making sure that goes through. So.
Oh, watch out for the bats or the owls or the gray squirrels. Make sure you're not doing.
Well, most of
anything.
it's just like prairie areas. We're not really impacting any timber through there, so we should be pretty good from the environmental species. Bigger thing's probably gonna be arrowheads and that type of stuff when we get
Yeah.
archaeological work.
Burial sites.
But yeah, so so we got to do that through there, and that's really the first kind of thing that when Dan that was on the line for the Dunn property had mentioned that the southern part of their stuff can't really have anything until sewer's brought from the south. So we got to get that sewer line in for the main trunk line, and then a chunk that goes up to that. And then that also kind of helps with this potential certified site that we're working on surrounding it. So yeah, lots of industrial stuff going on there. Other than that, let's see, we had a had some pre-app discussions for the other Ron property on the east side of the creek there opposite Shadow Creek. So if they decide to pull trigger on that, that will be all the frontage on the south side of Beardsley will have some kind of project going on with it. So it's pretty crazy.
Awesome. Anyone else have any questions for Luke?
I do add that at Beardsley, so I take my daughter to Lakewood every day.
Mhm.
I swear that there's a part, and maybe that does not have a chunk of sidewalk on,
Yes,
on
from
the south
McDonald.
side. Yes. Is
Yeah.
there- Like, I see kids walking
Yeah.
on the shoulder
Yeah.
of the road.
You're
to
right.
On the
Lakewood.
south side.
Yes.
We walked the floor.
Yeah, we walked.
Right, is
So
there,
the
like-
city's plan is for trail, 10-foot trail, all on the south side of Beardsley.
Okay.
We, right now, I think it's up to Lexington.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna have to widen the sidewalk through there. I think the next phase is to widen the sidewalk all the way down. And then you're talking about this chunk by Eden Crest probably
Yeah.
and
Right there.
Yeah, it's
these
right there too.
houses.
I mean, they're the
Yep.
whole way, they're right on the shoulder.
Yep, so I don't remember exactly how it's phased. Some of it, trail on the south side will be done as part of the Beardsley widening project, because we widen out the intersection widening. We do a lot of work at the intersection to widen it, but then like median gets put in along there, and then we'll do the trail, certainly back to Cedar, but I think as part of the Highway 28 intersection project, I think it's actually the trail going all the way back through the Legacy Point development.
And when is
But
that?
yeah, it's all supposed to be in it, hopefully by next, I think they're supposed to be working on that next summer.
Were we expecting companies or businesses who built on their lot to do a sidewalk?
Yes.
So why, I know that the nursing home, why isn't the nursing home doing their part or?
We have contacted nursing home about them financially participating with that. The city will build it and then we would recoup the cost from them.
And same with that builder on the other side of them?
The Legacy Point one, we've not reached out to them. I talked with our city attorney about which ones we should go after and which ones are gonna be easier to make sure they comply with it. And he was not comfortable asking that HOA to pay for that. Part of the problem is,
That doesn't make sense. Isn't that part of what they sign up for when they? sign
Why
up to
isn't-
develop?
Probably not at
Yeah,
that
why
time.
isn't the builder should have done that?
yes, so our lesson and what you'll see from us going forward is, I don't care where you're at, put a sidewalk in. I don't care if it doesn't make sense, that it doesn't connect to anything. What has happened in the past is the city has said, don't put a sidewalk in an area, or we'll let you not do that. Eden Crest is the most recent example. Our public works director at the time, who retired, didn't want them to put anything along there because, well, we're gonna widen Beardsley out at some point, and we're gonna have to tear it out and put in curb and gutter and sewer and all this stuff. So he didn't want them to put it in and then have it get torn out at some point in the future.
But didn't
My
we-
point being now is I think we just require them whenever they're required so that way connections are made. And if it gets torn out with a future project, so be it. I'd rather the connections be there, because if we would have required those at the time, you wouldn't see people walking on the shoulder, right?
Well,
Like it
that's
would
the
be
thing,
there.
like, Is
Yeah.
what would happen if, heaven forbid, somebody hits these little kids who are walking because they didn't have a sidewalk, which they were legally obligated to do?
Yeah.
Whose fault is that? Is
Yeah,
it
but
us
I
for
think-
not pursuing it? Is it them for not doing it?
I think at some point they weren't required though, right? Isn't that what you just said? At one point they weren't required and then.
When the site plan went through, like, right, so when the site plan goes through, we have pre-app meetings, we have discussions and stuff, and, now we tell people, put in your sidewalks along stuff. At certain times in the city, I mean, you can see it all over.
Yeah.
Greg Young wasn't required to put their sidewalks in around things. Let's see,
That
Lafredo,
was
Capital
when I
City
was there, I
Fruit
could've
don't.
sworn.
You have it all over the place. And the argument is like when someone would come to the city, and this is just, I appreciate your guys' point of like, well, you should have just made them do it, or they should do it. 10 years ago when the city was developing out and somebody wanted to do something in town, and then they were trying to make an argument of, I don't want to put the sidewalk
I
in.
have to call you out
The
on that
city was
one.
more willing to say, okay,
Everybody was.
And I'm gonna call you out on this point. We went back to St. John's,
exactly.
who is
We went,
older
yeah.
than the Youngs and the nursing home, and made them put the sidewalk in. and called them out on the fact that they were supposed to do their sidewalk.
And that's what we're doing with.
So that tells me if I've been on here and Young has come through me while being in P and Z and that nursing home, then that sidewalk should have been in there.
Yes, and so
So why?
we're going back to them now and telling them that they are required. We're not making them put in the sidewalk. We're saying, this is what the cost of the sidewalk would be. We are going to assess you that cost.
On the south.
north side.
On the south side, the north side, there is
Right
one.
along, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We've also gone to Greg Young this fall and said, put in the sidewalks or we're gonna put them in for you and assess them. So they've decided to put in the sidewalks.
So
because They
then
don't
the
want the city
other
doing
was
it.
Legacy Point, is that what you said? What is their story?
The best I can tell you is that I was directed to go give assessment letters for both of those. And our attorney, when we were talking through like what that looks
Yeah.
like, didn't feel comfortable doing
But
that
still.
because of the time at which Legacy Point developed. He didn't feel like it was probably adequately conveyed to them that they needed to do that. So I don't have any issue with doing it. It's just, I'm following the directions that I've had, so.
I cannot, that neighborhood has been a pain or a thorn in everyone's side for so long. Okay. The one that's right there. Yeah.
So, but you guys bring up great points about the sidewalk things and call me out on it. And if I bring a project for you, I'm like, I don't know if we should do a sidewalk on this one. Be like, Luke, remember in that comp plan meeting, you were saying about how we shouldn't do that.
Well, I think that was
Because
part of what
I-
Donna brought that up
yeah.
about on the other side of 28. How we're gonna make, if it's not gonna connect up, I mean, it's the whole the eastern half of the city.
So is Marketplace, are we putting a sidewalk on the east side or west side?
Now, Marketplace, I love these things. I would say we should have sidewalk on both sides. When Marketplace was being developed and the PUD was going in, the folks at the time felt it was better to have one wide sidewalk on the east side than two sidewalks. And so that PUD says that Marketplace only needs the wide sidewalk on the east side and it can have no sidewalk on the west side.
Would that have been, are you referring to us or the next group that talks about, or that approves this? Because I don't think we would have said only do
I
it on the
think
east
it
side.
actually was, we were here and I'm fine. I mean,
It's
it's
just-
a little jaunt
Yeah.
in, fine. It's just gonna be like using Elizabeth Holland, but at least there's a sidewalk leading to somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the kids falling into the street are as big as issue as I've walked that path 1,000 times. It's someone's gonna break their arm, their foot, their leg by tripping over into that area. And that's gonna be, liable on who? City.
They're tripping on the sidewalk side too. It's
True,
fine.
that's true. It's only gonna get worse, right? Anyway,
So goal is to have sidewalk trail on the
parks.
south side. So,
and parks. All right, so thank you. Is that it?
yeah, that's all I got.
So our next meeting is, God, I cannot believe it. I have to say that word, November 14th. And at this point, we can adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Perfect. I think you guys wanted to leave. Cool.
All in favor, say aye. And time is 7:13.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.